Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. More specifically, on this video, I'm going to be talking about the new moon in Gemini, which takes place on the 18th of June. I'm going to be talking about a lot of other things as well, because it's not just about a new moon. It's about what else is going on in the cosmos. And of course, I'm going to look at the chart and go through it with you. Let's talk technicalities first of all. The new moon takes place at 26 of Gemini and 43 minutes. It happens on the 18th of June at 4:38 in the morning. That's UTC, so you can make the adjustment depending where you are in the world. Another thing I think is important about the new moon, but it's important about any new moon, is that you can't see it. By the time you see that little sickle shape in the sky, it's already been new for at least a day, if not coming on for 2 days. So that's one of the factors about a new moon that we need to take in or bear in mind. And that is that we can't see quite what that new beginning is all about. Because new moons signify new chapters, new starts, new beginnings. And sometimes we can be fully aware that we're going to be starting a new course, or we're going to be moving house, or something like that is happening. It's already in the diary, so to speak. And so we think, oh, that's what that new moon is all about. But you see, there's always something hidden about a new moon, or the meaning of it, what it presides over, that we simply can't see. So there's always an element of the, say necessarily the unexpected, because often I use that for Uranus, because when we have Uranus aspect, it's like a bolt from the blue. It sort of comes out with a shock. Whereas the idea of a new moon, and you're not necessarily seeing everything about that new beginning, it can be a little bit of a gradual kind of experience. So things start to evolve gradually into a new start. And a little bit further on this video, I'm going to be looking at this sign by sign. Now, other things that I want to talk about generally about a new moon in Gemini, just generally. What this signifies, or what it's kind of bringing out, is the whole area of communication. So we should all think about communications when we think about this new moon, how we communicate, what we need to communicate, how we can make our communications better. It's also about travel. We think about traveling from A to B in the sense of taking a boat, a plane, a train, a bus. But of course, also we can make a journey in experience and in emotion, and all sorts of other ways that we make our journeys. So the fact that the moon, which represents emotions, it's the inner world, the moon presides over our responses to things, our reaction to things. Remember, the moon has no light of her own. We only see her because she's reflected by the sun. And so the moon has that meaning in astrology, that it's reflective. It's something we don't have to think about. It's instinctive, instinctual. So the moon in Gemini, if you like, and a new moon in Gemini is really about, well, two things. It's about emotional intelligence. So what do we mean by emotional intelligence? Taking control, understanding our emotions, using them in a way that's mature, that's clear. We have clarity. But also it brings together the idea that when we communicate, because the whole theme of the new moon in Gemini is about communication and travel, then we need to communicate in a way that really sends a message powerfully. And that happens when our inner self, the moon, if you like, is working together with the sun. So we get the idea of emotions and solar power, expression, force working at the same time. In a way, I often say with a full moon, when it's in your sign, you're empowered at that time. But in a kind of different way, with the new moon, this is also an empowering experience if it falls in your sign. And of course, I'm going to be looking at that very shortly. Another thing that I thought about in general about the new moon in Gemini, artificial intelligence, AI, that's quintessentially moon in Gemini. And of course, there's been a lot going on since last November about artificial intelligence, and we're now beginning to worry about it. You know, it's so sophisticated and it's going to be so amazing, but therein lies the danger, a little bit like splitting the atom and radiation and power. A wonderful way to heat the world and do all sorts of things, but of course we can blow the world up as well. So we have to be careful with our intelligence, and maybe the idea of the new moon in Gemini in the following 2 weeks, because remember, that is the cycle of the new moon until it reaches full. There are going to be some very big and important developments and decisions made with everything to do with, well, artificial intelligence on the one hand, but all sorts of other things that Gemini is related to: travel, communication, all sorts of things, education, things that really have to do with information, intelligence. That's what we're looking at with Gemini, and that's what that new moon is all about. So without further ado, let me take a look at this new moon in the context of all the other planets when we look at the chart. So as you can see here, as we look at this chart, I have set it for Melbourne in Sydney. And I try to do this every video I do, so we get around the world. I love Australia. I spent some time there many years ago, and I have lots of friends and clients and followers in Australia. I love you all. And here's my little nod to you all in Australia by looking at the new moon from the perspective, in this case, of Melbourne. And I remember Melbourne most of all for some of the food. The best food I've ever eaten was in Melbourne. And I know it's a bit of a food capital, really. So let's have a look at this. We can see the new moon there, 26th of Gemini, 43 minutes, in around the 2 o'clock position in this particular chart. Now, you don't necessarily want to take anything from this in terms of, this is, the new moon in Melbourne. What does it mean for Melbourne as a whole? I mean, it might. I mean, maybe there's a lot going on, and you can probably see Uranus, the planet Uranus, is that little circle with the telegraph, the aerial on top of it. That's sitting right on the descendant there. And when we get a planet sitting on an angle, and the angles of the chart are the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and IC, then the properties of that planet are going to be full on. And so we look at this new moon and we can see maybe really and truly all things to do with communications, surprises, maybe even controversy or controversy, however you want to say that, to do with people in the Melbourne area. But maybe there are lots of new things opening up, maybe even a new radio station or a new television program or something starting that's going to be a little bit controversial. But I'm straying away from the main point of what I want to look at, and that's how the other planets are fixed and what that means generally for all of us in terms of what's happening from one day to the other. Let me sort of go back a little bit from the new moon, and let me start with the 11th of June. Now, why is the 11th of June significant? Well, on the 11th of June, Pluto is going to head back into Capricorn. It's been in Aquarius since the 23rd of March, and now, since it's gone retrograde, it's heading backwards and crosses back into Capricorn. And it's going to stay in Capricorn until later on in January. So quite a lot of time spent going over old ground, which is why I always say if you have a birthday, towards the end of your sign, if you're a Capricorn, a Cancer, a Libra or an Aries, or if you have planets between the, let's say, 27 and 29 something of those signs, then Pluto is very, very active in your life, and it's doing its transformational thing. It's changing what once was into something new, and that is never an easy process. And I often say, when we think about the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis, we have no idea if that's painful for the butterfly. But we certainly know that when we have a Pluto transit, the new self that is emerging is painful. It comes about through some painful experiences. So Pluto heading back to Capricorn, it's going over old ground. So you may find, especially if you're in that birthday group or you have planets and points around 27 to 29 of Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, that things that you thought were done and dusted are now up for review. And of course, it gives you an opportunity, very much the same as a Mercury retrograde gives us an opportunity to rethink. Only with the outer planets like Pluto, it's a little bit more powerful. The things that we're going over again are going to be of a depth-charged nature, and they can have a massive effect on our future. And so I don't necessarily think of a retrograde planet as being in a kind of bad phase or less effective than it normally is. It can be super effective. It's just that it is in some way reviewing, going backwards over something. And as I said, that can be a very, very useful situation. So if we look at this chart here, we can see planet Mercury, that's in the sort of 2 getting towards the 3 o'clock position. In the horoscope that we're looking at right now, Mercury is at 11, 12 almost degrees of Gemini. But on the 15th, Mercury was at 7 degrees of Gemini, and it was squaring Saturn, which is down in the 5 o'clock position of the chart, 7 degrees of Pisces. Now, this is really an important period of June, because not only is Mercury squaring Saturn on the 15th, but at the time, Saturn will be stationary. It's going to turn retrograde on the 17th, the day before the new moon. So this is a very, very Saturnian period. And I want to mention here, those of you Pisceans who are February-born Pisceans, August-born Virgoans, May-born Geminians, and November-born Sagittarius. You've had Saturn floating around your sun since March the 7th, when it entered Pisces. It's been angling these signs in particular. So it's going to be a little bit more important for you this period of time as Mercury squares Saturn and Saturn turns stationary retrograde. Again, just before I get into that a little bit more specifically, very much in the same way as I talked about Pluto going retrograde or Pluto in retrograde, Saturn turning retrograde doesn't change its nature. Saturn is Saturn, whether it's going forwards or backwards, just like we are. I think there is a sense always with a planet that's now heading backwards that it's retracing its steps in some way. So rather like what I was saying, for those of you with Pluto at this sort of latter end of Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, those of you who I just mentioned with planets and points around 0 to 7 degrees of Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, and Sagittarius, you're going to be much more sensitive to this change of direction. Now, again, Saturn is going to be retrograding for a few months, and this gives you ample opportunity to discover the error of your ways. This is just generally, by the way, folks, not just for this group, but if you're in this group, that's definitely so. You'll come across mistakes. You'll realize what you missed. What weren't you paying attention to? What was really, really weak about a situation or weak in yourself? Because Saturn will root it out as it's in retrograde for the purpose of making it stronger so it can go forward again. Of course, what may happen in Saturn's retrograde passage is that a situation really was never built to last, and discovering the weaknesses and the cracks in a situation is what's necessary in order to not burden yourself with the situation any longer than you need to. Now, the idea of a Mercury-Saturn square and the idea that Saturn is turning stationary retrograde during that week of the, it's the 15th and 17th, is that that week is going to feel a little bit heavy. I used to think, and I still do to a certain extent, that the planets don't emit cosmic rays. I mean, just because Mars is here doesn't mean that happens. Except, of course, in astrology, we tend to infer that. I don't like the idea of cosmic radiation being emitted from the planets. I rather think of them as narratives. You know how I am about this. But I have to say that, especially with Saturn, if I'm not really on the ball with what's going on, I feel Saturn and I think, oh, this is that Saturn feeling. And it is a kind of heaviness. It's like all the kind of optimism of being zapped out, and now you're looking at everything in a sort of gloomy, negative way. So don't be surprised if you find yourself being much more negative around this period of June. And remind yourself it's Saturn. But what I do think is good about a Saturn influence is that whatever it is that's making you feel grumpy, whatever it is that you don't want to do is what you need to do. Grasp that nettle by the throat. That's what we do with Saturn to make Saturn strong. We face it, we deal with it. We don't try to exclude the planets, because like anyone, if you've ever been excluded from a group, you want to roar in there and say, notice me, notice me. Well, that's what happens when you ignore a planet. They become supercharged and they make a great nuisance of themselves. So really think about this in this period of June prior to the new moon. What is it that I don't want to do? What is it that's bothering me? And attend to it. Sometimes all you need to do is make a start. Making a start cuts down the anxiety level. But of course, sometimes the news is not terribly brilliant on a Mercury-Saturn square. And when Saturn is turning stationary, it does seem as though things are looking a little bleak. And as you know, we've had a difficult year. We've had some bright spots with some bright and beautiful things happening. But in the main, it's been quite hard work for almost all of us. So here we come to the new moon on Sunday the 18th. Why is this new moon special? I've talked about, because we can't see the new moon, there's something hidden about its meaning and what the new chapter, whether it's the new chapter itself that we don't know is starting, or whether we don't understand what that new chapter is really all about. It dawns on us gradually. So this new moon is squaring Neptune. You see Neptune in that 4-5 o'clock position at 27 degrees of Pisces. So as you can see, 26 and 27, pretty close, only a degree. The exact Sun-Neptune square is Monday the 19th, but you're going to be feeling this as we approach the new moon. And Neptune is at once very inspirational, divine, sort of otherworldly feeling we get with Neptune, perfect for romance, for actions of the most soulful kind. And, you know, we need Neptune for all of that. But the problem is we don't handle Neptune very well because we're human. You know, we haven't attained that lofty spiritual platform yet. We're not yogis. We don't always handle it well. And that means that Neptune often undermines us. It creates mysteries and muddles, and we feel deceived and betrayed, and we're really not too sure of what's going on. So this element of Neptune is built into this new moon. And the new moon cycle is, in fact, a couple of weeks. So we're going to be looking at that period from the 18th of June through to early July. And that's late June. Maths, not my strong subject. We can look at that for the new moon revealing its properties of new chapters, new beginnings, new starts. But let's not forget, being in a relationship with Neptune, there's a real mystery here. There's a real muddle. And certainly you will want to question information that you receive. Is that real? And if you check it out and it's real, then it's real. But if you check it out and it's not real, you've been saved a great deal of trouble. And I think, too, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, don't we? But it's probably not a wise thing to give people the benefit of the doubt around this time of the year, because there's something we're simply not seeing. And I think if we can remember that, then it's a pretty useful thing. Now, the other thing I want to point out about this new moon, talking about new beginnings and new chapters opening, there is a relationship between the full moon in Gemini, this new moon in Gemini, and the full moon in Gemini. And that's going to take place, well, it will be, yes, the full moon in Gemini. The sun will be in Sagittarius. So we're going to be looking at this full moon on the 27th of November. So it's a 6-month period, and that 6-month period is like a kind of gestation period. So the new chapters that come in around this particular time will take 6 months really to complete or reveal themselves fully. And relationships are particularly sensitive to this new moon and full moon cycle. So things that happened at the new moon, especially if you met somebody new or you make a decision about your relationship at new moon, then when we get to the full moon in Sagittarius, in Gemini, in the November period, 27th of November, then that is the fulfillment of the promise that began at the new moon. So moving away from there for a minute, we'll come to the next date in our astral diary, and we come to the 21st of June. And on the 21st, the sun will move into the sign of Cancer. Now, of course, as soon as the sun moves into a new sign, a new area of our chart comes to life. The sun is bringing its solar power to that area, making it more significant. But there's another important thing about the sun's arrival in Cancer, is that it's one of the cardinal signs. And as soon as the sun reaches 0 degrees of Cancer, we create a chart called the Cancer Ingress chart. And that enables us to see or get an idea of what the next quarter holds for, well, we use this in a mundane sense for political astrology. So depending where you set the chart for, whether it's Melbourne or whether it's Washington or whether it's Singapore, then you've got a picture of how that quarter is. So it's always significant. On the 25th of June, then we have Mercury squaring Neptune. And as you know, we talked about Mercury squaring Saturn, Mercury, the principle of communication and travel. So one thing you can say about this sort of latter period of June is that there are going to be muddles with transportation. If you're flying anywhere, maybe you'll get diverted, or maybe things won't take off as and when they were supposed to, or maybe if you're driving, you'll get rerouted and lost, maybe. Neptune is about getting lost, isn't it? Whether we get lost in the information, we get lost in love, we get lost in a situation, or we really get lost, can't find our bearings quite literally on the road or wherever we are. And I think we need to think about what we're being told at that time, whether we're being told things by our leaders and governments, or whether it's people giving us information, even people in call centers where we're trying to get something resolved. Remember, if Mercury is square Neptune and the sun is square Neptune, and I think we can section off pretty well the whole of the second half of June for that, then, you know, we need to really press for facts. We need to take notes, make sure we've got a record of who we spoke to and when, and what the nature of that conversation was. So half the time, as I mentioned with Saturn, what we need to do with Saturn is grasp a nettle by the throat. And what we need to do with Neptune is be inspired and do things of an inspirational nature. But at the same time, we really want to bear in mind that not everything is quite as it seems. Now, for the last date in your diary for this video, we want to look at the 30th of June. And that is because on that day, Neptune turns stationary retrograde. Now, we've talked about that with Saturn, we mentioned it with Pluto, and now here we have Neptune also turning stationary retrograde. So the whole of those last 10 days of June are Neptunized, if there is such a word. Now, particularly if you're a Pisces, a Virgo, a Gemini, or a Sagittarian, and you're born on the 18th, 19th of your month, then Neptune is a very, very strong character in your astrological story right now. So you are both inspired and confused. And I have talked about Neptune on some of my other videos. And I talk about Neptune often indicating a time of transition. And like, or similarly, if we wanted a metaphor, we might think of a raft crossing the ocean and we have no way of steering it. We just have to trust it. We have to let the current take us where it's meant to take us, and eventually we'll arrive at the shoreline. So it is very difficult under Neptune, especially those birthdays I've just mentioned, or if you have something at 27 degrees of Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, or Sagittarius, you're also in that kind of Neptunian phase. What we really need to think of here is that you can control what you can control, but what you can't control, you have to let go of. What you don't want to do is make matters worse by doing things and you're not sure what you're doing. When you don't know what to do nothing. One of my, most kind of common pieces of advice that I give everybody. So I'm going to come away from that now, and I'm going to come back to me, and I'm going to be looking now at what this new moon means sign by sign. So I'm going to go around the zodiac, having a look at what it means for you. But already, I think, up to this point, we've taken on a lot of information about this period of time. And I do find that when we look at these broad kind of perspectives of the planets, it really does help us monitor our lives better. And we sort of understand, oh, I get that. I understand. Oh, what was I supposed to do? Oh, I get it. So astrology becomes and has its greatest use in being our guide and not in being our controller. So also, I must mention at this point, exactly where I'm taking it. When I talk about Gemini, when I'm talking about Cancer, and what the new moon means for you, I'm looking first and foremost at the sun sign. If you just happen to be a Gemini or just happen to be a Pisces, whatever, then first take that interpretation from the perspective of your sun sign. Now, if you happen to know what your ascending sign is, and you know the degree of your ascending sign, and let's say your ascending sign is in Gemini, at the beginning of Gemini, then you'll know that you can look at this one as well. In the first house, the ascending sign, you've got Gemini rising, then this new moon will have a bearing on that as well. So you can look at both those two meanings. If you're born at sort of your ascendant is 29 degrees of Gemini, then of course the moon or the new moon is happening in the 12th house. So you've got to be sensible in taking the interpretations as you know which houses they're in if you have your own natal chart. But generally, as a rule of thumb, you know nothing about your own natal chart. You're a total astrological beginner. Whatever your sun sign is, listen to that, because that's going to be relevant to you, and it's going to be relevant anyway, wherever your ascending sign is. The fact that the sun, this so important body in our solar system, the center of our solar system, is the center of our being. So lots of things coming from the solar perspective are very, very well worth listening to. So let's start with Gemini. So Gemini for you, yes, of course, the new moon is in your sign. And we're looking at new chapters, but new personal chapters. Now, what is personal? What is personal to us? Well, first of all, it's how we look, how we present ourselves. And most of us get up and look at the mirror at some point during the day, and the image being back at us is who we are. So often on a new moon, we want to do something different about the way we look. Do we need to change our hair color, cut our hair? Do we need new things to wear? Have we got a rather stale kind of outfit? You know, do we need to freshen up? And we can do that. And in a way, when we freshen up our image, we send a powerful message to our unconscious mind that we're ready for new things generally. So that's a good thing to do, just a good little tip that you can use. If you've got a new moon in your first house, Gemini, then making something different in your appearance or how you present yourself to others is a good way of encouraging new starts and new things. But we also want to look at things that you're personally involved with, things that have your personal stamp on it. And that can be a business project, it can be a social project, it can be all sorts of things. But if you want to get your individual stamp on it, then this new moon is all about doing just that. Now, all of us, to a certain extent, are involved in social media, whether we have, a TikTok page, whatever we may have. And so this new moon says, hey, let's do something different. Let's, present ourselves in a new way. Let's send our message across in a different way. It's about new starts. Very occasionally, or not very occasionally, we can look at it depending on your circumstances. Let's put it that way. This can also encourage a new start relationship-wise, especially if you're looking for a relationship. You're single and you want a partner. You want to, hook up with someone. Well, of course, the way that we find a partner and that partnership goes from strength to strength and turns out to be something that's a perfect foil for us is because instead of looking out there for people to complete us, we complete ourselves first. So this new moon in the first house, this new moon in Gemini, if you're a Gemini, then we're looking at that idea of becoming whole in oneself, uniting the solar self and the lunar self. And by becoming whole, we're ready for real relationship. Now, if we come to the next sign, we're looking at Cancer. And of course, this new moon is taking place in the 12th house. That's house of secrets and shadows. So it's even more shadowy, that side of a new moon that we can't see. The aspect of what is to come that we can't see is even doubly so if you've got this new moon in your 12th house. And this 12th house represents the oceanic world of the unconscious mind. So powerful. I think people underrate it. We think we go to bed at night and we dream, we wake up the next morning and we think, oh, what was that dream about? That's nothing. But actually, dreams are an important way of the unconscious mind telling us what we've missed. Because, of course, like most things, consciously, we're looking at the conscious appearance of things. Our peripheral vision, so to speak, is picking up all sorts of other nuances that could be vital for us. And the way that message gets through to us is through our dreams and also through our intuitions. Now, of course, if we're very spiritually minded and we're very interested in developing our spiritual self, then this new moon offers us a new route to finding our spiritual path, our spiritual self. And it may be a great time to go on a retreat for spiritual purposes, even if that's just a yoga weekend, or maybe it's a bit more than that. We're doing meditation and having a silent weekend, for instance, or even a much longer span of time. The idea that in the silence, then great things emerge in the silence. And so that new moon might be a good way of looking at it and thinking, you know what, I need to get away. I need to find my silence. I need to connect to my spiritual self, and at the same time, allow my unconscious mind to reveal all sorts of great truths to me. On a more practical physical level, sometimes the new moon here reveals something in your health so that you make a discovery. You know, it can be a great discovery. You know, you discover a way to clear up an ailment, or you discover a way of, you know, living better, eating better, feeling fitter. But of course, it can also expose something we didn't know we had and needs to be attended to. So that also, Cancer, for you, is something to think about. And if you're listening to me and thinking, oh, that old injury of mine, I should get it seen to. The same with dental health. Always, this 12th house area isn't just about the spirit and the mind, the unconscious mind, but it's also about the physical body. And you know, the teeth are just as much part of our health system as every other part of our body. So then we come on to Leo. Now, for you, Leo, this new moon is taking place in the 11th house. And the 11th house is the area of collaboration. It's where we get together with people, where we find team spirit, and where working as a team brings results. And I want to add here that if you work as a team with your significant other, and you feel you're on team Leo, as it were, together, then your relationship will strengthen. There's nothing like being on a team, having a shared goal for creating unity. And we can bring that down to an ordinary relationship, one-on-one, to working as a good team in business or in some kind of social setting. This area, of course, is a little bit different from the idea of just working or hanging out together or developing friendships and getting to know your colleagues more at work. It's much more than that, because this area is about humanity. It's about our humanitarian self and us being part of the family of the world, if you like. And so with the new moon here, it's sort of a signal to get a little bit more involved with those kind of things, whether it means doing some voluntary work, getting involved in things that are going to help the planet, help your human neighbors, whatever it is, that inspiration to do something that's not just about the self, about you, but about the we. It's about the group, it's about the nation, it's about the family of nations. So you're spreading that out. So there's a new thing happening. Also, it can be a new enterprise. So if you are already an entrepreneur, or you have your own business, or you've got something that you do and earn money, but it's self-motivated, you're the boss, so to speak, then this new moon can indicate a new contract, some kind of new offer, some new enterprise. And that too is going to be a good thing, because if we embrace the new, at the very least, we learn something new, but often it can be the beginning of something really beneficial for our future. If we come now to Virgo, then this new moon is happening at the very top of your solar chart, and that is the area of life direction. It is your goals, your life goals. If we think about being born, having or growing up in a family, and the adults, whether they were our parents or whoever looked after us and molded us as we were growing up, that's all about what we're going to be and do as we become an adult and go out into the world. So this new moon has a lot to do with bringing out a new part of our life direction. And maybe in some cases it means not doing what our parents told us to do or got us geared up to do. We've got to find our own way out in the world. So the new moon, Virgo, is offering you that. It's also on a kind of mundane level saying, hey, there's a new job coming in. Now that can be a new job in an existing career. You've just got a new thing that you're going to be working on. If you've been hunting around, job hunting, then this new moon is a sign of a job in the offing. And that may be very useful to those of you who, are job hunting. But we can also look at the idea of this part of the horoscope being our material world as well. And even if we think, you know, the most important thing in life is to love, to be loved, our spiritual selves, our souls. These are the important things. Well, we still have to live in a real world. That's why the 10th house is ruled by Saturn. It's part of the real world. And, you know, we need to handle our real world. I mean, it's no good, you know, wafting along, being a great soul, and you're living on the pavement, the sidewalk. You know, we need a roof over our head, and we need sustenance and substance in our lives. So this new moon is also about getting that sort of really working for us. So there may be even a new location for you, a new home even though that's more a 4th house thing. Because of the axis we're on, it can involve a new home or a new work location. But just think of ways in which new things can stream into your life, in the sense of, you know, what do you want your life to be? If you knew your life was up next week, what did you want to accomplish? What did you want to have done? And that new moon is a reminder of, you know what, if you want to do something, it's time to do it, or to set the stage in which to do it. And remember all those other aspects I've been looking at the beginning of this video, talking about Saturn, Mercury and Saturn, Neptune. All these things are going to play in to your ability to manifest something as regards who you want to be, where you want to be in life. If we come now to Libra, then this new moon is in the 9th house, the 9th house of far horizons. I love that label for the 9th house. In fact, I love the 9th house. It's where we, where we travel sometimes. We want to see our bigger world, far horizons, meaning places at a distance from us. And of course, you could be taking a holiday, going on a business trip, traveling for some kind of reason, and it will be taking you far away from home. You're going to be seeing a lot more of your world. But this new moon, aside from being the promise of a journey coming up in the next 2 weeks, it's also about other kinds of journeys, a journey in emotion, a journey in experience. And the new moon here is a sign that something new beginning is going to add considerably to your world. And that can be the world of knowledge, the world of life in general. But it's new, something new that's going to start, and it's going to expand your world. What I also think of when I think about this is education as well. And August is usually the time when all the results come through, certainly in the UK, when students who've been taking their A-levels get to know what university will accept them. And so there is a sort of hint of this a little bit now, whether it's that you've got to go to interviews, or there is something about if you're that age and you're going to university, then this new moon has something to do with all of that as well. But it may also be, whatever age you are, whatever your interests, this new moon may awaken in you the desire for knowledge. I want to know more. I want to develop. I want to grow. I want to expand my knowledge. I want to expand my spiritual self as well. So things that do that are also probably on this list in terms of what this new moon can bring you. So in a way, it's both. I don't really like waiting and seeing what's going to happen. I never recommend that. I always recommend being aware of what this new moon offers. And if it chimes with what you're thinking or what you are desiring, then it is a signal to get behind it. Okay, let's come to Scorpio. Scorpio, this new moon is in the 8th house. Now, the 8th house is that rather mysterious area. When we look at it in astrology, and we think about what the 8th house is, or which planet rules the 8th house, it's Pluto. So we're in a rather underground world in the 8th house. Pluto, of course, is your ruling planet. So you're well used to the deeps of life. You like to get to the bottom of things. You like to experience things to their very limits. You are an extreme sign. So when we get a new moon in the 8th house, it's encouraging you really to get to the roots of things. Now, this could be a simple matter. This is one of the financial houses of the horoscope. So maybe what this new moon is about is getting to the bottom of a financial matter. But it may also be the beginning of a new financial arrangement. It could even be the sign that some money is coming to you. So this area of the chart is about receivership. So it's what you receive from other people. So this new moon may indicate that other people are ready to give you something that is to your advantage. Now, one of the things also, when we looked at the chart, remember the new moon is square Neptune. You may not initially realize what is being given to you. And you may mistake what's being given to you. So remember to really dig deep and really think about what is being offered to you, especially of a financial nature at this particular time. While the new moon is a positive indication of striking up new agreements with banks, lending institutions, credit card companies, even forming new business partnerships or the financial aspect of business partnerships, even with your partnership with your significant other, your spouse. This new moon is indicative of a new financial arrangement between you. It could even be indicative of a partner's earnings. And so there's something new coming into the financial relationship, but it's coming in through your partner. So lots of things to consider here that mean other people are part of your financial story. This area of the chart too is about intimacy. So it could indicate a new intimate relationship on its way, or perhaps if you're already in a relationship and, if it's gone on for a while, some of that, luster wears off, but that new moon can bring it back. You suddenly find that the doors to intimacy are open again, and what a beautiful experience that could be. I leave you with that thought, Scorpio. So let's come to Sagittarius. And for Sagittarius, this new moon is in your opposite sign. So we're in the area of relationships. So the new moon on the face of things says, hey, guess what? There's a new relationship coming in. It could be a new business partnership. It could be a new romantic relationship, or it may be a new stage of an existing relationship. And let's think about this. I mentioned a little earlier that this new moon in Gemini has a relationship with the full moon in Gemini on the 27th of November. So in particular, Sagittarius, a relationship begun around this new moon, or a decision made about a relationship. I mean, that could be a wedding date, for instance, or it could be something else you're deciding to do with your significant other. Then that's got a kind of 6-month timeline. And so something will be completed, or you'll be able to review that decision or action in 6 months' time. Now, this new moon can also indicate a new stage of a relationship. So that, let's say you've been dating someone and it's been kind of casual, but actually you've developed feelings for this person and vice versa. And this new moon will indicate a deepening of your relationship, more of a partnership now than a sort of dating kind of thing. It can also be very useful if you're in a relationship which is going through a difficult time. All relationships go through difficult times. There's no such thing as a relationship that's always wonderful. Relationships are organic things. They develop, they evolve according to the events that happen in or to the couple, you as a couple. So I think the new moon says, you know what? You've been looking at this whole thing the wrong way. And it's about time we tried some new tactics. We got a new kind of spirit, a new kind of perspective on our relationship. And this might be just the thing you need to get your relationship back on track. Now, the interesting thing here is, remember, that new moon is in your opposite sign. It's in the area of other people. So it could be that your partner or another person is the person that comes forward with an idea or a plan or some kind of negotiation. So don't be too proud or too fed up to go along with it, because this new moon is offering a new start one way or another. But remember, Neptune's in the mix. Sometimes you can't see what that's all about. And I would say to a few Sagittarians, if you are going to partner up with someone new during this period, this new moon period, you need to check the backstory there. I'm going to leave it at that. Capricorn. The new moon for you is in the 6th house. So the 6th house is an area where we do a lot of organizing. It's about systems. First and foremost, it's about our daily routine. And never underestimate how important that is. I mean, our daily routine is our life, isn't it? That gives our life structure. We get up, we clean our teeth, we go to the bathroom, you know, whatever. We go to work, we pick up the kids, take them to school. This is the structure of our day. So a new moon here is saying, you know what, maybe your day isn't functioning too well. Day after day after day, this is not allowing you to do what you want to do. It's not allowing you to function properly or to function as a family properly. So you need to look at that daily routine and how that needs changing in order to free up time to do things you want to do, to note things that are causing you aggravation. Looking at it and analyzing it and breaking it down day by day is illuminating, and getting a new kind of structure to your day is important. This is also about health. You know, your daily system is also your health system. So the new moon here is saying, you know what, maybe you need a new look at an old health system, and you need to introduce something new. It's good to shake up your routine, isn't it? Your health routine, your health system. It makes it function better. And maybe you need to introduce some new practices. Or maybe you need to attend to a problem that you've been ignoring. That new moon, very much as it does for your opposite sign here, Cancer, is something you need to address. So if you're feeling that something isn't working too well, or something you're not happy about, take it to the professionals, because it needs attending to, and that new moon is going to fix it. Same with a dental problem. Don't just get hooked up into the body as we think about our body, not our teeth, but this is an area of dental work as well. So maybe that new moon is indicating something on that nature. Last thing I want to look at about this new moon in the 6th house is that this area of the horoscope has a lot to do with finding our purpose in life. And that's a pretty big thing, isn't it? I do get asked quite often by people, I want to know what my life purpose is. And I always say, well, I don't know what your life purpose is. I can give you a few clues, but this is such an individual thing, such a spiritual thing. You have to discover it for yourself. And there is a spiritual activity. It's called seva. Which means that your daily service, so to speak, is your spiritual journey, is your path. So that when you're washing up or taking the kids to school, or you're doing whatever it is that are apparently routine, mundane tasks, that in itself is revealing your life purpose. It is the seva you must do as part of your spiritual journey. So that too may be illuminating that the new moon being in this area of the horoscope gives you an idea of all of that. So coming on now to Aquarius. Aquarius, the new moon for you is in the 5th house. And the 5th house is a very pleasure-driven area. It's the house of the inner child. It's our inner joy. It's the things that we don't have to think about. It's our spontaneous self, if you like. It's our creative self. So things to do with creative projects, creative matters, and pro-creative matters. So with the new moon here, it indicates a new project, a new creative project. And you can, of course, come up with that yourself and think, you know, I've been looking for this for a while, and hey presto, new moon in Gemini in my 5th house. I've got a new project. It's landed on my plate and I know what I'm doing. But it's also an opportunity to think to yourself. And I always say that when we're involved in creative things, we are finding our joy, aren't we? Because we're creating something. It's like we're children again, and we're playing. And so this new moon is about finding that aspect of you and deploying it, using it in your life, finding the joy in life. This can also be a very romantic area of the horoscope. So there could be a new romance in store, or maybe it's bringing the romance back into a relationship that sort of lost its romantic spark. So new things beginning have a kind of sense of involving you at core level. And this is a very gratifying and joyous experience. On a more mundane level, it could indicate perhaps a period of activity and sport and doing things that are fun. Maybe you're going away on holiday, or you're doing things with lots of people, or you're just generally having a great time. Well, why not? I mean, you know, life isn't meant to be miserable. Well, yes, it is for a lot of us, because look at the times we're living in. But even in the misery, there are moments of joy and things we can do to deploy our inner joy. And this new moon is a call to arms, Aquarius, for you to find your inner joy. And maybe just spontaneously things happen in your life and press all those buttons and you feel, oh, that's so great. I feel so good. Okay, here we come to Pisces. And for you, Pisces, this new moon is at the very base of your chart. So it's the roots of life. It's your family. It's your ancestors stretching back through the generations. It's also where you live, your 4 square walls. But it's also your inner home, you know, that inner sanctuary that is you. It might be a very, very private place. So the new moon here is saying, hey, there's a new chapter beginning for all of these things. If we look at it on a practical, superficial, mundane level, we can say there's a new chapter opening up for family. Now, does that mean new family members coming in, whether through marriage or through birth? Or does it mean that you, as a grown-up parent, are about to welcome your grown-up children back into your home? Maybe it does. But this idea of it's a new chapter for family life can be expressed in so many ways. But we can also look at changing our home environment. And I talked about this for Gemini, really, the idea of having this new moon in your 1st house. If you change how you look, you bring something new out in your persona, that sends a message to the psyche that you're ready for new things. And I think this is a similar thing for you, Pisces, in that sometimes you need to give the home a freshen up. You know, change the furniture around, paint a wall, new piece of furniture, whatever it is. And that can change your environment and cause you to think differently about your environment, period. You know, your home environment, your sanctuary. There could be a change of location here. So maybe some of you, some Pisceans, are thinking of moving house, whether that means renting a new place or moving in with someone else, or maybe it means putting your home on the property market and selling it. It's all to do with property. And it can also be about business here. So maybe turning your home into an office or starting a home business can all be symbolized by this new moon at the roots of your chart. This is a powerful new moon for new beginnings in general. But remember all those other factors about it. Neptune, mystery, not altogether clear. Also, because the new moon, we can't see it. Even if we know we're starting a new chapter, there's going to be something we can't see about that new chapter. So here we come on to Aries. Now, Aries, this new moon is taking place in the 3rd house of your solar chart. So we're looking at things to do with information, travel, communication. It's where you use your voice. So maybe it's a period, or this new moon is indicating some ideas you want to share with other people. And getting those ideas off the ground is your intention. Spreading the word, that's another theme of this new moon. So maybe you need to tell people about something going on in your life. Or maybe you've got something that needs to be said, and you're going to use every medium possible for that. Your social media platforms, whatever they are, you're going to give some information out. But of course, it's about receiving information as well. So news coming to you in this 2-week period from the new moon could be really important. It could set you on a new trajectory. It could certainly set you thinking about things in a new way. But remember that invisibility about this new moon, that perhaps you won't realize the full ramifications of an offer that is made for you, or a piece of news, piece of information that seems very important to you, and it's going to send you in a new direction. Remember, there's going to be something about that you won't know. Does that mean you shouldn't go for it? No, it doesn't. Of course not. If you've got something new offered to you and you're feeling it on all levels, then for heaven's sake, Aries, go for it. But remember, you might need to check it out, and you might also need to be aware that what you're seeing isn't all that you should be seeing. We need to add that too. I think this is also about learning things. And if you've been considering perhaps, what I could do with, getting a few extra skills, and maybe I should do this course or that course, that's a good thought to have on this new moon. The same really with something related to academia. Maybe it is time to embark on some kind of academic course, or maybe it's you who are the teacher. So you're going to find yourself in the role of teaching somebody how to do something. This new moon is all about communication. Anyway, it's in Gemini. Remember, I talked about that at the beginning of this video, emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence as well. So all these things might be very, very relevant to you in this new moon cycle. And perhaps these new kind of rather exotic ways we have now of doing things like voice text, hearing a voice and allowing it to be put in the printed word, or the other way around, the printed word turning to voice text. It's using this kind of medium to widen your world and to open up new possibilities for yourself. It's all to do with the mind. It's all to do with the voice. It's all to do about spreading, information and receiving information, the exchange of information. Lots of important discussions and meetings going to happen in this 2-week new moon phase. Finally, my last sign on this is Taurus. So Taurus, for you, the new moon is in your next door neighbor sign of Gemini. So it is in the second house of your solar chart. And the second house is all about self-worth. Now, of course, the most important thing about self-worth is what we think about ourselves, how we value ourselves. Because if we feel we're full of value, then we can go out in the world and be successful and play a part in the rest of the world. If, however, we're feeling very underwhelmed with our self-worth, it's very low, our self-esteem is low, then all sorts of things don't go very well. We feel excluded from the group. We feel undervalued by other people. We just feel generally that the world isn't, treating us well, undervaluing us. But it really does start from us. And sometimes, even if people are treating us badly and they're not valuing us, we need to figure out what it is that's valuable about us, and to really start to emphasize that, not to look at the negative, but to think of all the things that are really full of value to other people. And by focusing on those and bringing them forward, and remember, when we looked at the chart, We saw that there was all that Saturn, Mercury, Saturn turning stationary, retrograde, Neptune. We've got all this playing into the new moon. The chances are that you might really feel less than full of value. But remember, we grasp those nettles by the throat and we turn them into something we can use. So the opportunity here with this new moon is to really reboot your self-esteem and really put a list down of all the things you offer other people, all the things that you have, and look at that list, look at it and say, wow, am I ever somebody? Do I ever have a lot to offer the world? But we might also want to stretch that out and think about your assets and think about finance. Unfortunately, we have to look at finance, even if we're spiritual selves in a material world, and we value things of the spirit more than we do things of the material. We do have to put a roof over our heads, pay for things, we have to get about. And so the second house is about money. It's about how much money you have in the bank, how much money you don't have in the bank, and how to improve that. Remember that new moon is about, it's waxing, it's growing bigger. So we could think of a new source of income, perhaps. So a new job offer coming up, or a salary raise, or another source of income. Maybe even if that's you coming up with an idea about how you can make a little bit more money. And, when I think about that, investments in things, sometimes we have to invest in ourselves in order to grow. And maybe this is what this new moon is about as well, investing in your talents, investing in things that will provide a means for you to grow your assets and grow your finances. I think, too, it's a good time to start new agreements. So if you've come to the end of a financial agreement, it's time to start a new one. Or it's time to think of new ways to increase your cash supply. So that might mean looking for borrowing or looking for some other means of increasing supply. So there we are. That's all 12 signs done and dusted. And all that's left for me now is my conclusion. So I was thinking a little earlier, and I talked about it in reference to Saturn, about sort of grasping a nettle by the throat. And I sort of want to say a little bit more about this in conclusion to this video. And it's something that I've been working with increasingly over the past year or two, working with my clients, because I think, especially when we develop an interest in astrology, we get to know pretty early on the bad guys. we don't like Saturn a lot. We don't like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They're the bogeys. They're things that tend to come into our lives and cause a lot of trouble for us. But they're there for a purpose. And I think we need to remember that. It's like accepting everything in ourselves, accepting everything in our family, and accepting everything in our family of planets as well. So whatever we have to deal with in our charts, by transit, by progression, even the basic planet itself in a natal chart, we really need to embrace it as part of ourselves. I think if we think of the planets as separate, the difficult planets, the transpersonal planets as separate from us, they're out there and we don't really want to know about them. We hope they don't notice us. I'm going to hide behind this bush and hope that Pluto will just pass over. Well, no. And it is in embracing all the planets as part of our family that we gain wholeness in ourselves. And the route to doing that isn't just by saying it. Okay, today I'm going to embrace Saturn. No. It's about an experience that has a Saturn signature on it, or a Pluto experience, an experience that has a Pluto signature on it. We have to embrace that. We have to look at it. We have to turn and face it. We can't hide behind the bush. We really do have to look at it. And when we look at something in its reality, we start to see more about it. And Sometimes we have to find the good in a person to start to be able to like that person. And it's the same with the planets. We have to be able to find the good in a planet to start to be able to work with it. It's part of us. It's part of our celestial family, our solar family, and we can't ignore it any more than when we have a family upset. We just don't speak to that member of the family. And it does happen. It can happen, and it's a terrible thing. But there's always a sense that you're missing a limb, isn't there? There's something that's unspoken, unhealed. And that's why we have to look at these more difficult influences and work with them and embrace them. And I referred to it, earlier in Saturn, in what can we do by facing Saturn? We look at what we don't want to do. We look at getting to grips with it. As the same with Neptune. Maybe we don't like the fact that things are slipping through our fingers and we can't make a decision, either because we ourselves can't make a decision or because other people, we're depending on other people to do something, so we can't make a decision. So it's working with Neptune and saying, hey, Neptune, what is it that I'm meant to be embracing at this point? Sometimes it's the act of doing nothing under Neptune, which is very, very hard for some people. To just let the reins of control go and see what happens. It doesn't mean to abdicate responsibility for your health or for your finances or anything like that. It just means letting go of the steering committee. Let's see what happens when we relax and say, hey, I'm going to meet you. I'm going to face you as much as I can. Neptune, you're all over the place with your tentacles and your oceanic presence. Nevertheless, I'm going to deal with this and I'm going to make the most of it. So yes, that's my real summing up. And it's a kind of life tip as well, isn't it? By facing our fears, we conquer our fears. And we could use the same thing when we think about our difficult transits, progressions, and aspects. By facing them, we conquer them. So thank you all for watching, and I thank you for your support. What would I do without you? We'd have no channel at all. And I do try to get back to as many of you as I can. And I'm thrilled that you care about astrology and want to promote it. Thank you, and bye-bye.